All right, we got wet there, man. Woo!
Good afternoon and welcome to the next episode of my series in the Landscape Photographer Profiles. And today I have travelled to the coast of Waterford to meet with a photographer. His name is Graham DAly, and Graham is a professional photographer, so he earns his living from photography, and particularly in regards to landscape photography. And I'm going to spend around 3 or 4 hours, I think, in total with Graham. It's early afternoon now. We're going to be here until sunset. And I hope to learn a lot in regards to how he thinks, how his approach to photography makes him different in the images that he produces. And also as well, like I would do on the previous episodes, to learn more about the equipment that he uses. And one of the items I really enjoy is the top tip and the best advice that he can give for photographers, both new, existing, or seasoned photographers as well, because everybody's approach is slightly different in regards to landscape photography particularly. So I'm going to get Graham set up here, and I'll ask him a few questions like I normally do in the previous episodes. I'll link to them here, and we'll see in regards to Graham what makes him tick and how he goes about taking his photographs.
What style of photography? I suppose there's two aspects to my photography. There's my personal and then there's my commercial. As a pro photographer, I have to cater for both. I have to address both. Myself personally, it's in the landscape. It's at the coast, it's at the sea where I feel most at home, most at ease. It's where you'll find me most of the time. This is what I do for myself. This is what I do to bring me enjoyment, satisfaction. I'm not thinking about what images I can sell or what's going to promote my business. This is where I come for me, and it's where I feel most at home. You'll find me on the beaches and the coastlines of Cork, Kerry, here in Waterford today on the Copper Coast. You'll find me up in Antrim, Donegal, pretty much anywhere along the wide Atlantic Way. You know, if you walk along the coastline enough days of the week, you're bound to run into me at some point. And then there's the commercial side of my business as a pro photographer. Obviously, I have to think about, you know, what's going to promote my business, what's going to sell commercially, and what images are in demand. My workshops, I kind of provide training and bringing people around to teach them how to use their cameras to different places as well. So there's that side as well. But for me personally, all the time, it's at the coast where I feel most at home. What equipment do I use? Well, first and foremost, I've got my trusty Canon 6D, which is with me pretty much all the time. It is a great landscape camera. It's a few years old now, but it's more than you need. 20 megapixels. I know you can get more out there, but it's more than you need, more than enough for what I need. I've got the Canon 16-35 f4, fantastic lens, and it's on my camera 95% of the time. I also have in my kit bag a Canon 70-200 f4 lens, another nice, compact, lightweight, short telephoto lens. I'd have the Canon 50mm 1.4, lovely fast aperture lens, which gives you nice bokeh at wide open apertures for different types of shots when you want them. I'd have a Canon 400mm lens in f5.6 for kind of more long lens landscapes, or most often some of my more wildlife and nature type of shots. And then I'd also have a Samyang 14mm f2.8, which is in my bag all the time but it's specifically for my astrophotography needs. Nice fast aperture, which is what you need for shooting the night sky. Outside of the camera and the lenses, I would have a Nisi V5 Pro filter system at this moment in time. I have used Lee in the past. I've used Koken before that. To be honest, it doesn't really matter. You know, whatever filters do the job for you, that's what you need. Typically, once you have a grad to control the exposure between the sky and the foreground, and an ND filter to just lengthen the exposure to give you longer exposures. That's pretty much all you need, 2 filters. And outside of that is the usual stuff, you know, proper outdoor clothing, waterproof boots, waterproof jackets, tripod, good sturdy tripod, carbon fibre, works great in the coast for withstanding the corrosion of the sea salt. You know, and you know, you'll always have a few other bits and bobs in your bag, lens cloths, rocket blowers. You know, you build up over time, but that's mostly the main piece of my kit bag. How do I typically take a photograph or approach my photography? Well, when it comes to my landscape photography, I have an intentional approach, and what I mean by that is that I don't come across images accidentally. I spend a lot of time researching locations for image making potential. First, I'd use tools like Flickr or 500px or even Google to find other images that have been taken from a scene at similar times of year or different you know, in different lighting conditions. I'll then use apps like the Photographer's Ephemeris or Photopills on my phone or on the desktop to see where the sun is going to rise and where is it going to set and what time it's going to rise and what time it's going to set at different times in the year. And from there then I can work out what time of year is best suited to the photograph that I want to make at that location. So for example, if we look at the stacks behind me here, you know, in the middle of the day in this light it's a bit harsh, but I know that in the winter time the sun is going to set just about where my hand is over here, which is going to cast a nice bit of light directly in front of me on these rocks here, as well as providing some nice little side lighting to the rocks behind me, which will give a nice magic hour feel to this scene. During the summer months, the sun is going to set over beyond the headland, which is going to cause a lot of this being silhouette. So there's a lot of planning before I even go anywhere near to the location. Then I actually go visit a location in the time of day which would not be the greatest for image making potential, just like we are here now. The light is harsh, it's not the best, but you get to scout out, you get to see what's on offer, what's the area like at a high tide, what's it like at a low tide, what's it like in a mid tide, and you'll get an idea for where, for what kind of tide you want to achieve the image that you want to make. And then from there, it's about heading out to the location in what you think is the right weather conditions based on weather forecasts. But of course, as we know in Ireland, the weather's unpredictable, you don't know. So it's about going there time and time and time again, and eventually you might come back with the image you want. Quite often it's a case that you head there, the conditions don't work out the way you want it, and you have to adapt and try and make other images. But I always have in my head that original image that I want to make, and I'll keep coming back to the location time and time again until I get that image. My top tip? Well, I suppose going from experience and what I've seen through leading and delivering my own photography workshops, my customers, ranging from all different sorts of people, from novice, you know, beginners who've literally just bought cameras, to more experienced people that have, you know, been at it maybe a few years or whatever, and just looking to improve. I think the one common thing that I constantly get asked, you know, is how do I get the most out of the equipment I have, and how do I produce images that I'm seeing by my peers in my camera clubs, or by my friends who are also into photography, or even just by images that I see on my social media feeds like Facebook or Flickr or 500px. How do I go out to a location and get the image that I see online or that I've seen in my camera club using the gear that I have? Well, firstly, I try to tell people that it's more important to invest in yourself than it is to invest in your gear. And what I mean by that is, look, you can go off and spend €4,000 buying the latest Canon 5D Mark IV or the Nikon D850 or the Sony A7R Mark III, all fantastic cameras. You can go off buy the top of the range f2.8 Zeiss optics or Canon lenses or Nikon lenses. But you know what? If you don't know what you're doing, if you haven't learned how to operate your camera, if you haven't learned how to use manual mode or aperture priorities or shutter priority, if you haven't used how to read light, how to expose for the light, how to adapt for the light, and how to compose the elements in your scene, how to choose what elements to put in and what elements to put out, then to be honest, it's not really going to matter whether you have a €200 GoPro or a €6,000 Canon 1DX. You're not utilizing the camera to the best you can. So that's what I mean by invest in yourself. Attend workshops, attend training, buy training packages online, watch YouTube videos. There's no shortage of free YouTube content out there at the moment. You've got guys all over the world traveling around, recording videos, teaching you how to use your cameras. Go search for videos dealing with your specific camera model or your specific genre of photography. Invest in yourself. Get out often. Don't just keep going to the same place, but try and get to different locations, go to different times of the day, and use your camera, push it to its limitations. If you have one of the entry-level cameras, that can take perfectly good pictures for you. And then when you get to the stage where maybe you're finding that it's a bit noisy in low light or shooting astrophotography, that then is when you can start investing in gear. You can get better gear because you know what you're doing with the gear, and you can then use that better gear to help improve and push your photography to the next level. But don't go out and buy the latest and greatest camera equipment without first knowing how to use it. If your expectation is that the better camera gear is going to magically take better pictures for you, that's the wrong expectations and you're just going to be disappointment. So my top tip, always invest in yourself. Don't ever stop investing in yourself. Attend workshops today, attend workshops for different guys next year, travel further afield to the UK, Iceland, whatever, and attend workshops over there. There's no room for where you can't improve on. One best advice that I've learned through the last few years in my own photography, which has improved my photography the most, is to understand natural light. And what I mean by that is this. If you're a studio-based photographer, you work with artificial light. You can modify, control the light, change the light temperature. You can change the angles, the intensities, the positions, and even the amount of lights that you use to achieve the lighting effects you want. And once you come across a formula or a setup or a pattern of lighting that works for you and the shot that you have in mind, then you can repeat that formula over and over again with a 100% success rate. Us guys out in the field, us troops in the landscape, we're working with natural light. We've got one light source and we've got no control over it. There's different types of light, and it's about learning how the light interacts with the landscape. So you can see right here now that even though it's still early in the day, there's a bit of cloud cover which is acting like a softbox, just like your studio lights, and it's providing a nice bit of contrast control over the light in the landscape. There's no harsh highlights, it's easy to control the exposure. Conversely, if there was no clouds here and we were shooting under a midday sun, we'd have very harsh light, which would give a completely different mood and a completely different feel to the image. Likewise, when shooting at sunrise and sunset, during the magic hours as we like to call them, that is often when you get the most subtle changes in light, the best shadows and the best light temperatures for the images that you're looking to capture. So if I could sum up, the best advice as a landscape photographer is to learn how to work with natural light, how and when to shoot, in the given light conditions to achieve the images that you want. If you learn how to control light and learn how to work with natural light, that's a big part of the landscape battle. Another look, then shooting at this time of the day might be what you want. There is no wrong type of light. There's just simply different light and a more suitable light for the image. Woo! All right, we got wet there, man. Woo!
So that was a really interesting conversation I had with Graham there. I really liked his approach to photography, and also as well, like I mentioned at the very beginning, his best advice and top tips. While we were actually recording this, a pretty big wave had come in and absolutely soaked Graham. I was perfectly fine, thankfully, but I'll show that as an outro at the end of this episode. But again, you know, if you want more information on Graham, you can check out the link to Graham's website. I'll place it down here, and I'll also place some contact details as well in the description on this video. So what will follow from here now is some images from the day that Graham will have captured. Right now, as Graham would have mentioned as well during the video, the light is quite harsh. We are getting a couple of clouds now as well, so hopefully we'll be able to get some nice light as well. We're here for the afternoon for sunset, and I look forward now to the rest of the afternoon and spending some time with Graham, and again seeing how he puts his practice, I suppose, or his ideas into practice in regards to taking photos. So that's another episode of In the Landscape Photographer Profiles with Graham DAly. I really do hope that you enjoyed it, and I look forward now to ongoing with this series, to meeting the next photographer and seeing exactly what makes them tick and how they would take photos in the landscape environment.